addition to that, you might not know about this. You know I was at McDonough the past 3 years, and last year we had one of my students commit suicide. So I don't like to use the word commit. That's actually a negative connotation. I'm glad I said that. So when you say commit, it sounds like almost like you're doing something against the law. Like I commit a murder, something like that. So we say take your own life, because it sounds like a negative connotation. If you're talking to a student about suicide, you don't want to use the word commit because it gives them a negative kind of feeling about it. So, anyway. Suicide prevention. We're going to go through definitions first. Suicide is death caused by self-directed injurious, which is a word I just learned recently, behavior with the intent to die as a result of the behavior. Suicide attempt is a non-fatal, self-directed, potentially injurious behavior with intent to die as a result of the behavior. Suicide attempt may not result in injury. And then suicidal ideation, which we use a lot, is thinking about, considering, or planning suicide. Okay? Now, I had some issues with self-harm this year in 7th grade. And parents always seem to kind of go to the extreme, thinking that their child is looking to kill themselves when they're talking about self-harm. And they are two different things. So the question is if a student is self-harming, does that mean they want to take their own lives? I'm asking you guys.
No.
No? No?
Not necessarily.
Okay. So suicide versus self-harm, the DSM, which is kind of the Bible of mental illness, states that with self-harm or non-suicidal self-injury disorder, NSSID, these self-destructive behaviors are carried out without any intention of suicide. 50% of teenagers have inflicted self-harmful behaviors on themselves. This does not mean that students who self-harm this does not mean that students who self-harm may not have thoughts of suicide, but the act of self-harm does not mean that they want to kill themselves. So if I call a parent and tell them that Janie is cutting herself, parent automatically thinks that Janie wants to kill herself. And I had to explain to them that is not the case. I'm not saying that that's definitely not the case. Like, I'm not saying that there might be other thoughts there, but that's not the reason that she was cutting herself. Okay? So reasons why individuals cut themselves or engage in self-harming behavior, to reduce negative emotions. So it's almost like it's a way to get the emotion out in some way. To feel something besides numbness or emptiness, so they feel numb to everything, that's where they feel again. Feel a sense of control, since they feel they may not have control over their lives. I have one student in 8th grade that this is a big part of it, because they feel like their parents control everything. So this is the way they control themselves. This is the way they have control over their body. To avoid certain social situations, which is a new one for me. And then to receive social support. So those students that need the support, and they need to kind of get the support of their friends, and that's how they do it. Suicide facts. Depression affects about 20% of young people. About 60% of those who commit suicide, and actually I use it in this presentation. I got to take that and change it. So I will fix that. But 60% of those who take their own lives have had a mood disorder, such as major depression or bipolar disorder. Suicide among males is 4 times as high as the rate among females. Why?
More successful.
What do you mean?
They carry out more violent acts.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Okay. So females tend to go towards pills, and when you take a pill, you can have a moment of clarity and say, "Oh, I need to call and get support." Males tend to go to more final needs: guns, knives, hanging, things like that. Okay. Suicide rates have increased more than 30% in half the states since 1999. Nearly 45,000 people in the United States died by suicide in 2016. Okay. That is 1 death every 12 minutes, which means during this presentation, 2 people have tried to take their own lives in the United States. Probably 3 at this point, because there's longer than you guys expected, sorry. But it's just something to think about, because it happens all the time. Suicide is the second leading cause of death for people ages 10 to 34 years of age. And then the next page kind of explains that. It's a little more detailed it's in the presentation, but it's easier to see on the screen. So you see in green, that's suicide. That's why it's at number 2 for 10 to 14, 15 to 24, 25 to 34. You'll see homicide is number 3 and number 4 for that same age group. Even ages 1 to 4, homicide is the 4th leading cause of death. Of course, this is from 2016. I'm sure the numbers haven't changed that much. So it's kind of scary. But that's what these kids. The suicide rate is a lot higher than I ever thought before I started taking this class. So. Risk factors: previous trauma, history of mental disorders, depression, substance abuse, impulsivity, aggressive tendencies, violence, previous suicide attempts, family history of suicide, self-harm is a risk factor. Just because they're self-harming doesn't mean they're trying to kill themselves, but it is a risk factor for suicide. Hope that makes sense. Okay. Isolation, being cut off from the world. Again, my concern is we have a lot of students that have homes in the middle of nowhere, and their parents are working 24/7, so they're home by themselves almost all the time. Being a witness or experiencing child abuse, not able, willing to get mental health support. I've had students that have been trying to get the mental health support, trying to talk to the parents, but the student's not willing. What do you do to a student that's really not willing to go and get that support once a week, or whatever it is? Okay. Loss, financial, social, relational, work, so some sort of loss in their lives. Will not seek help due to cultural beliefs or stigma attached to mental health support. There are certain cultures where going to see a doctor or a therapist, they won't do it. That's just certain, not my culture, but there are cultures like that. Warning signs. These are the things you need to look out for in the classroom. 1, talking or writing about wanting to die or kill themselves. I'm going to kill myself. I wish I were dead. I wish I hadn't been born. Talking or writing about feelings of hopelessness or having no purpose. Giving away valued possessions. Drawing dark images pertaining to death and suicide. Talking or writing about feeling trapped or being in unbearable emotional pain. You'll see I keep going with talking or writing because a lot of these students, they're not able to express it verbally, but they'll write it in the stuff you guys assign for them, and then you all bring it to us. Typically, that's how it works. Talking or writing about being a burden to others, abusing substances, acting anxious, agitated, or reckless, experiencing extreme mood swings, showing signs of a change in sleeping habits, withdrawing from isolating themselves, saying goodbye to people as if they won't be seeing again. Okay, that's happened a couple times this year, where they kind of come over to the teacher and thank them for everything they've done for them for no reason whatsoever. I think they had with you, Ms. Truesdale, once, if I'm not mistaken. That's a warning sign right there. That's okay. Let's get the counselor in here immediately to make sure that student's okay. Someone who's normally down and depressed now all of a sudden is elated for no reason, like I told about my friend earlier. So someone that's depressed, all of a sudden, they make a decision, I'm going to take my own life on this date. Now, a weight's been lifted. So now they're very happy because they know that they're going to get past this mental pain because they're going to take their own lives. Symptoms was what they're feeling: isolation, sadness, feeling emotional pain, ups and down mood swings, hopeless, they feel worthless, they feel helpless, they feel depressed. And again, like I said before, feeling the joy or relief once the decision is made to go through with the suicide attempts. All right, so what can we do to help support these students? Treatment of suicidal thoughts or behaviors depends on the student's specific situation, obviously. For example, if they're dealing with depression, then we have all those things we talked about with depression for, getting them mental support, getting therapy or group therapy, possible hospitalization, depending on the risk factor, and I'll explain how that whole process works in this school. Medications such as antidepressants, and then we have lots of hotlines that the students, we have cards for all these hotlines in our office, so all these different support lines that students do use. They do try to call them, and again, when they call this hotline, the 24/7 hotlines, there's someone on the other end that's trained to kind of help someone that's dealing with thoughts of suicide, thoughts of depression, whatever's going on in their lives. As educators, like I said before, many of these topics, many of the warning signs in these topics are all very similar. So how do you as educators kind of figure out, okay, what the student is dealing with? If you see more than one warning sign, you bring it up. You talk to us during a, well, first of all, don't be afraid to talk to a student. Don't be afraid to say, hey, are you feeling depressed? Or even using the suicide thing, talking about that, because as we tell students, you're not going to put the idea in their head. By talking about suicide, hey, you think about taking your own life, okay? That students, if they really say yes, then they've been thinking about that. It's not anything that you're going to tell them that's going to make them, we want you to talk, because if they're talking about it, then they're not going to do it, they're not going to be as likely to do it, if that makes sense. So again, don't be afraid to talk to the students. Talk to the counselor, let us know what's going on. Talk to the parent, or call the parent with the counselor, that's fine too. Talk about the student during our SAD meetings, see if it's happening, see if they've seen things in other classrooms. Or talk to Mr. Patterson, who's our school psychologist, works more closely with some of our students that are at risk in the school. All right? If a student makes a threat to harm themselves, or you receive information that makes you suspect the student will harm themselves, you know the process, but I'm going to go through it anyway. First, you call the counselor immediately. Do not leave the student alone. We will pick the student up from class usually. If the counselor's not available, talk to administrator, get them to come pick up the student and bring him to the counselor. Counselors, let's see, do not leave student alone, complete, then you have to, one thing that we forget to do in this school sometimes is completing that emergency referral form. That's part of the process, we need to make sure we're doing that. So if you have a situation where the student comes to you, and then you bring it directly to the council, you still have to fill out that form. Just because it's part of the process, we wanna have that documentation. All right? And then, once you get it to us, we do what's considered a safe screening with the students. We decide on the risk factor, we call Mr. Patterson, talk to him, or if he's in the building, talk to him here. And then we call the parent, whether it is a low risk factor or a high risk factor, we still call the parent. So we talk to the parent, and then if it's a high risk factor, we have the parent come in, and then it's very possible we might suggest that the parent take the student to an emergency room to get evaluated by a professional. Okay, it could go as far as that, or it could go as far as they take them home and then make an appointment with their therapist. Okay, or it's not a very high risk factor, but it's something we want to keep an eye on. So we talk to the parent, making sure there's there's nothing in the house they can do anything with, that kind of thing. Okay. Again, safeguards we have in place to educate and protect our students in crisis. We do a presentation every year with the 7th graders and 8th graders about suicide prevention. So we don't do it with 6th graders. We talk about stress in 6th grade because we don't think they're ready for that. But in 7th and 8th grade, we talk about suicide prevention. I know Ms. Trudeau got her kids. I'm sure Emery was talking about that at home after the presentation. Health classes discuss substance abuse every year with the students. Teachers are trained every year in the process about the emergency forum, the safe screening by counselor, risk assessment by school psychologist. Again, in school, we have our weekly SAD meeting discussions. We have our student support team meetings. We have our IEP meetings, 504 meetings, all places that we should be talking about these things if you have concerns. And then we have a Tri-County Youth Services counselor who's in the building, who has a regular caseload that we pretty much assign to her beginning of the school year based on the student need in the building. I'm not going to go through it, but one of the handouts I gave you was a suicide handout from the CDC. Just kind of go through a lot more of the facts and everything that we talked about, that I talked about during this presentation. And there is an evaluation on your desks. If you don't mind filling that out for me, just to kind of, you don't have to go around the room twice.
I did, just to make sure.
Okay.
Got everyone.
So, and then, that's it, I appreciate your time. Now, like I said before, what I plan on doing is tweaking this for next year so I can present it to the staff. So if there's anything you think I should take out, or you think I should kind of shorten it because this is a long presentation, you let me know. Or maybe breaking it up into 2 presentations. But I would like to do this with the staff because, like you said, all these students in 7th grade are going to be 8th graders next year.
Right.
So we want to make sure that they are supported and they know just information they need to know. So, thanks. You could
Turn it off?
hand it to her.